My name is Marina Hou and I'm president of the Oxford Women in Law Student Society. I'm also a second year law student at St. Peter's College, Oxford. So I grew up on the Gold Coast in Australia, which is a very small city that is essentially, imagine beachy and surfers. That's about the vibe of my city. And so I grew up in a school that was academically inclined, but never had any students go into Oxford, especially not for undergrad. We'd had a couple BCLers, but very much far removed from the high school community. I had a friend who was going to apply for Oxford. He's now at Berkeley, unfortunately, but he did apply, and he wanted somebody to apply with him. And I was like, sure, why not? I have nothing better to do. And in fact, at that point in time, I'd applied for medical schools as well in Australia. So it was a toss-up between whether I wanted to be a lawyer or a doctor. I came over for my interview and I fell in love with the city. I think it's really hard to not be in Oxford and not love Oxford, because you realize you're surrounded by all of this history and all of these people who've touched history and all of these great thinkers. And it's very hard not to fall in love with the city. It's very hard not to fall in love with the people. So I realized very quickly that this is where I wanted to be. And I prayed and I hoped for my offer letter. And then I got my offer letter. And they do this really sneaky thing where they don't actually send letters to international students. So they send it to us in email and they do it as an attachment. So all I saw of the email was, "Thank you very much for applying." And in my head I went, oh, I didn't get it. So I didn't open the email, and it was Chinese New Year thereabouts. And so I was in China. So I thought there's no reason for me to open the email. A week later, I thought, well, there's nothing else I can do. So I opened the letter and it turns out I got an offer. And then I was over the moon. And I think what Oxford represented was an additional influx of opportunity. Like, my city was, again, small, like very limited opportunities were available, and opportunities like this just simply weren't advertised and weren't offered. So to me, it was very much like stepping up in the world. And in fact, my mum said that a lot when I got my offer. She was like, "You're stepping up in the world." And that's very much what it felt like. A couple of months ago, me and my friend Tanya were sitting in a room and we were thinking about student societies we could create, because we realized that the opportunities we wanted weren't being offered, but we couldn't quite figure out what kind of society we were looking for. And then she and I were discussing, and after a while, I fumbled upon, well, there's an Oxford Women in Business, there's an Oxford Women in Consulting, there's about 900 of them around campus, some more active than others, but there's no Oxford Women in Law. I had a meeting with Zoe at the law faculty, who is one of the access officers, I believe. I just sent her an email one day and said, I have these ideas and I want to do them, and please meet with me. And Zoe, being as lovely as she is, sat me down for a coffee and listened to me jabber. And then that day, she tried introducing me to Kate. Kate wasn't in the office that particular day, but I realized that how Zoe operates and how Zoe expected me to operate was very much to just go knock on someone's door. So a couple of days later, I was in the law faculty and I thought, well, why not go harass this girl named Kate? And I went up to Kate's office and I was like, I have this idea. I'd like a Women in Law Student Society. I have a feeling I know how to do a student society, but I want to work in conjunction with the law faculty. And also because I was very aware that I really liked the name Al, and I didn't want to just take it. So I spoke with Kate, and then Kate obviously was very enthusiastic and then helped me set everything up, helped introduce me to Judith and all of that. And so once everything got rolling, we decided we needed a specific ethos, because we didn't want our ethos to be lost in all the events and the projects that we will end up implementing. So the ethos we ended up coming up with is we want to promote gender diversity and gender equality in the field of law. And so using that ethos, we've now planned out a term card, we now have projects in the works, essentially all building to our overall goal of providing just access. And so, for example, I think some of the highlights in our calendar are, we're doing a fintech and legal tech panel next week actually, which is awfully soon, with people from LexisNexis and Bristol's, and these all like very influential female figures in this particular industry. And then they're all being chaired by Justine Pyler, who is obviously an associate professor at Oxford. And it's all this conglomerate of these powerful female figures who are working in this very specific field, and providing access to people like that and showing people that those careers are available and those careers are actually open to them and more open to them than they ever thought, I think is a very powerful tool. And I think when we were trying to build a society and try to build towards the ethos, I realized that actually the most powerful tool in our, let's say, toolkit was the ability to provide access to these people who'd done these things and done these things with their careers. And for me especially, because I think eventually I would like to end up at the bar, meeting people like Helen Mantfield and Kirsty Brimlow will be more useful than anything I could ever learn in a classroom. So with regards to, I think, underrepresented genders, being not from one myself, I think it's quite tough to evaluate, but I think the most important factor is to start a conversation about what they need and what they require and how we can work in conjunction with them in order to provide the necessary implements for them to grow. The key problem is that for example, for the alumni network, I think they are less represented simply because at our university, it's very clear that there are lots of people who identify as intersex, non-binary, transgender, perhaps because it's more open and more welcome, so more people are willing to step forward and go, that is what I identify as. But from an alumni network perspective, I think that's a lot less accessible. So it is starting the conversation in the first place and saying, well, firstly, for example, I remember you emailed me about what the asterisks represented. And for us, the asterisk is incredibly important, but we didn't quite realize that people wouldn't know what the asterisks represented. So it's all about starting the conversation about who they are, what they require, and talking in conjunction with them about growing and making sure that they are comfortable without making it seem like we are the overlords offering a helping hand. When I graduated high school, I had all these options open to me and I wasn't quite certain what I wanted to do. Then I got my Oxford offer, and it's very hard to say no to Oxford law. I'm not certain I want to be a lawyer. At the moment, I'm looking at the bar because I think my personality very much inclines me towards that kind of career. However, at the moment, I think I'm going to definitely do a master's after my degree and then think about where I actually want to go with this career and with opportunities in the future.